Hey, Brandon.
Hey, Kayla.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'm still
You're
just
welcome.
taking in this room and this awesome facility you guys have here at the Fort.
Thank you so much. We work hard to try to, not so much me, but everyone else.
Everyone else works hard, enjoying the fruits of their labor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just live in it.
Yeah.
This is Brandon Strozier, everybody. First of all, welcome back to the Fortcast. Thank you for watching. This is our friend, Brandon Strozier. He is a minister at First Baptist Church in downtown Columbus. And he also is the leader of Second Story, which is a college ministry that is out of First Baptist.
That's right.
Brandon has been a friend for many years. When I was in college and I was, looking for a peer-like community with my age group, there didn't seem to be many options. And then came Brandon with Second Story, providing free food for us broke college kids. And it just really worked out. And I was here with Sam. Well, it'll be last week when this airs. Sam Stevens. And he was saying if you play your cards right, you can eat free every day.
Yes.
And, that was my motivation when I first came to Second Story. I had some place to go on Mondays, a place to go to Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And Second Story was on Wednesdays. It's still on Wednesday, right?
Still on Wednesday, yep.
So, not right now,
right.
But it will be on Wednesdays. And a couple of my friends were like, hey, did you hear about that Second Story place? They got free food and they have lasagna today. And
that was it.
It was pretty good. So I was like, oh, let's go then. And I had an hour or so before choir. So I went and I ate. And I met Brandon. I feel like I met him maybe 5 or so times before it actually stuck. And
it's usually the 5 rule for me. That's how long it takes for folks. I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah. It was for you, though, because there's one of you, but there's a million of us.
That's true. It does take a while. It does take a while sometimes.
So, yeah. You know a face.
And you were in the Schwobian days of your life, which I'm sure at that point, that's a tough world to be in.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
I forget that even happened sometimes.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like the only reason I remember is because, like you said, that's when we first met, and that was the first days of our friendship. So.
Yep. So Brandon was the leader of Second Story, and after I was going to get free food, I moved on from being a freeloader to actually trying to see what the ministry was about. And you guys used to have Reclaimed on Tuesday nights, and I could never go because we had choir on Tuesday nights. But then you changed it to Thursday nights the next semester. And that was early on. It was either the first year or the second year.
That's right, exactly. It was all within the first full year was when that happened, yeah.
Yeah, so the second semester, I started going to you guys' Reclaim service. That's what they call their Thursday night
worship service. That's right.
And
the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It has certainly been a blessing all these years to work with Kayla. And, I'd like to say that she's changed, but she's always been just as wonderful, I think. I really think she has. She's obviously grown and she's matured and, as we all tend to do sometimes. But she was just as great back then. And even as a college student, I feel like you had a real depth to you. And obviously, Christ was always at the center of your life. And I don't remember a time when I haven't felt that from our relationship or our time together.
Thanks for saying so.
Yeah.
Very kind words.
It's true. Obviously, since we've enjoyed partnering with you at Second Story, you've been able to lead and help to guide us some there, and just in a volunteer role of just helping with worship, and that's been such a gift. And obviously, I wouldn't put anyone there, just like any church, I'm sure, or any ministry wouldn't put anyone there that we didn't trust and didn't really see Christ in, and so I think that's been an obvious, that's obvious that I feel that way about you. But
well, thank you.
But it's so exciting to be here today.
Yes.
Yeah, and get to talk about the things that we'll talk about.
The things that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
The world may never know. No, I'm kidding. I didn't necessarily prepare anything to grill you about, just because, our conversations are always pretty organic, and because we both love Christ, they always end up being inspiring and encouraging in some way, at least to me. So we're just setting up a camera and letting people into that.
I like that.
So yeah, tell us more about Second Story.
Yes. So.
Well, no. Before we get to Second Story, we want to know about Brandon. We want to know about you.
A little bit about me.
Yes.
It all connects, so that's okay. I grew up as the son of a Baptist pastor, and that was a big definitive part of my life growing up. I'm from Georgia. My whole family is from Macon. So that's where I was born and raised. And my dad, when we were in middle school, we moved for the first time from that church that our family kind of had been at forever, that he was pastor of, to a couple of different locations around the state over the next couple of years. 2 places. We went to First Baptist in Manchester, Georgia. And so in the late 90s, I would come to Columbus to go to Hollywood Connections and the Peachtree Mall and Walmart. Those are the spots. I had no thought of ever coming downtown. We'd go to Victory Drive, as teenagers, just to kind of leer at all the crazy things over there, all the seedy underbelly, so some of that stuff, especially that used to be there back in the day. But more than that, really we just stay on that Manchester Expressway side of town and just kind of go to the things that you go to back in the late 90s, So, and then we moved again to Covington, Georgia, which is kind of suburban Atlanta, southeast Atlanta. And then I came back to Macon to go to Mercer University in 2000, and then graduated from Mercer in 2004, and then came to First Baptist in Columbus, Georgia, 5 days after my college graduation in May of 2004.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been in Columbus ever since, so I guess that would be 16 years ago. Yeah. And 2009, I got married to Sarah Powell Strozier. She is a Columbus person. I knew once I married into her family that Columbus was probably gonna become a long-term home. And she had gone to Auburn and graduated, and we got married, and then I was finishing up seminary, and I was driving to Atlanta 5 days a week to finish up seminary, or not 5 days a week. For 5 years, I drove to Atlanta, from Columbus to Atlanta, for the first 5 years of my ministry. So 2009 was also the year that I graduated from seminary. Got married, and so I went from having kind of half the time to do a full-time job as a youth minister at First Baptist, which is what I started at in 2004. I went from having half the time to do that full-time job to having the whole week to do this job that I already loved, and also had this ministry partner in my wife to help me. So it was exciting.
If I was smart, I would have gotten you both to come here because she's amazing.
She's pretty great.
Yeah.
She's pretty great in the way that I feel like everyone that sort of finds any success always has this partner and spouse usually that is the one that does the heavy lifting and really helps to make it all happen. And she is that for me, for sure, in our family. So 2009, so I was youth minister at First Baptist there from 2004 until 2015. 2014, our only child, Abel, was born, and so he'll turn 7 in January.
Love it.
And so early on in our ministry, early on in me as a minister and a father, I decided to sort of take a different path and took a job with my father, who had retired from the ministry. He had retired from full-time ministry, and he was working outside the church in kind of like a parachurch ministry. So for 1 year, I went to work with my father and had great success, enjoyed that. It wasn't necessarily any more conducive to being a father, and kind of being, a lot of it was more like travel. So I was still busy, but also I was gone from the city more often, which didn't necessarily make anything easier. And also I missed the relationships and sort of what ministry brings you, as a minister. I missed all those things that obviously were part of my calling. And then in January of 2016, I came back full-time to First Baptist as the city minister, and my focus is that ministry center, strategically located ministry center in Uptown Columbus, Second Story. So that was that. Obviously, the story of Second Story is interesting, one in itself, but that's the kind of me in a nutshell, and my wife and son, and we all live in Columbus, and we definitely call Columbus home. I've been here now for 16 years, and it's definitely a wonderful place that I've enjoyed.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've obviously gotten good at wrapping it up. Yeah. Whenever I tell my life story, I'm like, well, I was born in this
I could do that. I could do that option. I could do that. I could go that route.
I went to school for.
I feel like as a minister that is often asking people to share their testimony, and giving them this desire to wrap it up, maybe wrap it up in the way of help us understand it, but understand like the limits of our time, and just like, let's just, maybe 5 minutes, give us the 5-minute version. And then they start, and they're just in the sweetest way possible. They start, with that version where they start, with year 1 and year 2 and, and then year 3.
Well, when I was 5 years
But
old.
let me jump back to my second year of life, that kind of thing. And so then you're like, wow, this is not going to be 5 minutes. Yeah. So I know the audience, I'm sure the audience is excited to hear from me, but maybe that's surely enough for sure about me. So, awesome. But yeah, the second story was a blessing. Yeah. Working at a church like First Baptist, having had a relationship there, having had worked there already for 11 years nearly, the church knew me and had a comfortable relationship with me. And there was an opportunity, and God obviously was orchestrating of, putting the timing and the availability of funds and my availability, and my heart was being led in that direction in some really neat ways. And the pastor of First Baptist, Jimmy Elder, his vision, and it all came together in a way that none of us could have ever imagined nor planned. And even now looking back, how quickly it all came together, and how if it had not come together so quickly, some opportunities like the location and other things would not have been available for long.
Yeah. So what was First Baptist? What was their motivation for starting a college ministry?
The last couple of years of my youth ministry, I had, when I graduated seminary, essentially, I got like a raise because I was a seminary graduate. But the raise came with a whole nother job. I was the college minister also. So it was also just like a raise, but also just like, okay, well, you're doing a little bit more work too, sort of thing. Here's another duty, here's another responsibility. And it was college ministry. And so from 2009 till 2014 or 15, I did college ministry also. Okay. And so, working at First Baptist, we're, 3 blocks away from Uptown Columbus. The River Park campus is growing and exploding, the theater school, the music school. So the church is recognizing this opportunity. And so we would, for all those years, we were reaching out to students. We would have activities, have a lot of stuff where we were trying to get people to come to First Baptist. And, we'd have, varying levels of success with getting them to come just a couple of blocks. Mm-hmm. But whenever I would do an event in Uptown Columbus, it would just be really successful because, of course, I was, almost right in front of them. Yeah. And it was just, it was always just an obvious kind of thing that if we could somehow find a location down there, that was sort of one of the first thoughts about being in Uptown Columbus. Mm-hmm. And also just the recognition that obviously Uptown sort of continuing to grow in its scope toward young adults, with it being now a place where people in dorms lived, and where it's totally different than what it was before, just in entertainment and a restaurant venue and a place for
it's way more.
It's just totally different. So holistically, you'd probably want to offer something like that. Mm-hmm. Even Columbus State would, there are a lot of other ministries in Uptown Columbus, particularly the Abbey and College House, places that we love and have worked with. Before I left the ministry for that year, I partnered with the Abbey to do a worship service weekly called The Upper Room. Yeah, it met above the loft on the 3rd floor in a room that was then repurposed into office space. But at the time, it was called like the chapel, I think they called it. But they let us use it each Thursday night. We lugged all sorts of sound equipment up and down the stairs, which is like literally the steepest stairs in Columbus. And, and I think a lot of people that we all know and love in town were involved at some point with the Upper Room. They got to come by there once or twice or something like that. And so I had that experience. The church had that experience, but recognized sort of the opportunity to really, kind of fully lean into creating a ministry for young adults, for college students, but that was sort of that ran alongside First Baptist and didn't necessarily require everyone to come to First Baptist. Less a funnel to First Baptist and more sort of a place that's going to create ministry opportunities for young adults. Mm-hmm. And obviously Columbus State's going to be the focus of that schedule, but Fort Benning, Columbus Tech, people in their 20s that are not in school, that are just, working and finding a living elsewhere. Yeah. That kind of thing. And so I met with the pastor one day. He wanted to meet with me because I told him, hey, this job that I took with my father, it's not going to be a new career. It's going to be just a transition to something else. And so I thought, we were going to figure and talk about just whatever. And he had an actual opportunity that he wanted to share about this. And the cool thing was, over the course of that year that I was gone from First Baptist, I had begun to return to First Baptist after about 6 or 8 months.
Okay.
I was the youth minister, so I needed to give the guy that replaced me a chance to interact and feel comfortable with, the youth without my presence being there. I'd been there for 11 years, so it was like a tough thing to kind of replace a little bit. But I had such a good relationship. It was a former youth that sort of the interim when I left, so it wasn't that hard. So I came back after a couple of months, and what happened was, one morning during the service, I was writing notes during the sermon, and I kind of got lost in my own train of thought, which we sometimes do, not often, but sometimes, and, just started jotting down the idea of a storefront ministry center in Uptown Columbus. I still have the little note card, and, ministry and missions and service and linking to young adults and kind of actually having a physical location to do so in Uptown Columbus. And then within 10 days of that time, of that Sunday, I have a lunch meeting with the pastor, and he offers me the chance to come back and do that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of incredible. We had this meeting, and God was already sort of turning my heart in the direction of Uptown Columbus as a location for ministry, and already kind of like beginning to sort of set in motion this vision that, I could have never have imagined First Baptist would have also shared. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, like, we want to create a ministry center, and we want to do these things, and of course we want to work with young adults, and we want to pour resources out, but maybe this is not the time or the place to do it, there's we can't say yes to everything, essentially.
Right.
And so I could have never imagined they were really ready to move that aggressively in that direction. And so when the pastor met with me, my availability, my reaching out to him was just as noteworthy as the timing of, what I was experiencing, because, they were beginning to really focus on this opportunity, but didn't have a person in mind that could possibly oversee it.
So it was meant to be.
Yeah, I guess so. I pray that that's the case, and obviously try not to sort of assume that, but, we definitely over the course of the last 4.5 years have really experienced a lot of, I think, meaningful ministry, and really, did a lot with a lot of young adults, and, helped to really do something meaningful in that area of town.
Yeah. So First Baptist saw the opportunity downtown.
Right.
And kind of it just worked out that you were also thinking in that direction. Right.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
It came together.
Our visions were brought together, and
awesome.
I think obviously we all acknowledge, the hand of God to sort of, those visions to be so closely aligned. And for us, you mentioned at one point when you talked about looking for a place of working with young adults or working with people that were your age. Mm-hmm. Even in 2016, I feel like the level of opportunity for people in their early 20s was just different than even it is now, 4 years later. There's been so many ministries that have popped up since we first began that were not around to begin with. And so it's been interesting to kind of watch.
In my mind, you weren't the first to do college ministry, but in the fashion that you do it,
right?
In Columbus, there wasn't many other ministries like that, where it's like, the pressure's off.
Right.
Come, be who you are.
Right.
Fellowship with us, eat with us. Just welcoming them in and serving that age group is what it was centered around. Yeah. Not so much like come so that our ministry can be successful.
Right. There was a bit of a void, and, for young adults and for college students and for Columbus State. Columbus State's got a couple of ministries that are on main campus that are really, I think not only are they successful, but they're just, I think they identify with Columbus State students.
Yeah.
And so
BCM is a really good one.
BCM is great. Chi Alpha, those two are two really, vital ministries, but they're both really focused on main campus. Mm-hmm. And so, having the River Park campus really grow, and, I think the River Park student, they really have an identity for Columbus State that's just totally different than the main campus student.
They do, yeah. I was a music student, and that's exactly what I experienced. It felt like a completely different school, completely different experience. I had some main campus courses, throughout my time there, because the core classes were up there. But even after a while, they started offering core classes in the downtown campus so that we wouldn't have to travel back and forth.
Right.
So the whole thing just felt completely different from like your normal college experience. And there was, like you said, there was a huge void there when it came to ministering to those.
Yeah, and like you said, like there are other places and other people doing effective ministry, but there was an opportunity, and so yeah, we were just so thankful for that, and even the location that we meet in is a former dance studio, Company C, which now is at the old Showplace building on 13th, but they were in that facility. They were ready to terminate their lease, and the person that owns that building, Edgar Chancellor, he was a friend of the church, sort of thing. And, and so the building's availability was barely even, it was barely even something that people got a hold of before we were able to sort of get in line. And, it just because of the location right there on the corner of 11th and Broad, across from Iron Bank, above Freeze Frame, right in the middle of all the activity of Uptown Columbus. It's just a great place. And that being that kind of facility, that kind of location, it would need to be off the street or it would just price itself out for a church or for any kind of ministry, no matter how much money you were going to set aside. And so, to have that being on the second floor was really helpful also. Yeah. So it all came together.
And the space is beautiful. If y'all ever get a chance to go and swing by once things are back in session.
Yeah, we've been closed like everything else.
Everything else.
Right. We actually are just incredibly proud of it. First Baptist, they are proud of the ministry also. And so much of what's in that building, probably more than 85% was donated, or the money was donated for something specifically, or the actual item was just a donation by the church. And we have like a reclaimed wall, which is, obviously very, kind of in style these days. And on the back of all the pieces of wood are prayers that church members wrote for the ministry, for the young adults that would be coming in that building.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, and so it's all, it's just really a beautiful thing. And the church is just, it's up 2 flights of stairs, and so it sometimes limits, everybody getting to come up and just hang out with us because you got to be able to walk up 2 flights of stairs. But the church just celebrates, and just the relevancy of the ministry and how it's really reaching people. Yeah. And free food,
free food.
College ministry.
Above everything else.
College ministry, we do reach out to people that are not necessarily looking for a faith opportunity. A lot of people that come in Second Story are looking for free food, or they're looking for whatever it is, whatever the moment calls for, whether it's a fun activity or some kind of free giveaway or just some sort of big event. But so many people, so many young adults have reconsidered and been more willing to consider what God is calling into their life, I think, because of that first introduction that was definitely just a gift, a love offering from our ministry, whether it be just food or something else. Yeah. Activity and just, something big and fun.
Being one of those students, like, when I first walked through the doors of Second Story, I had no intention of, like, being involved in any type of way, like, in the ministry function of it. I was just like, this is a cool place. Right. I feel like the welcoming environment just to everyone equally is what like attracted me to Second Story to be more involved. Not that I felt like I was, I felt excluded by the church or that I felt like I just needed that. I didn't. Right. But I knew that it was a place that other people could feel that. Yeah. And that for me at that time was very different from what I was currently experiencing. I was experiencing we have it all together and we all come together to worship God, and we're in this cool faith club because we know how to do this. Right. The culture of how church can be sometimes. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I was heavily experiencing that at the time, and so it was just refreshing to see you and the leaders of Second Story not be like, you can only be a part of this if you believe in Jesus. Like you can only partake in this if you're going to be, in the ministry and opening up to God. It's just the loving on people part and the serving people part that that opened people up, otherwise to God.
Yeah, when we were trying to figure out the name Second Story, I feel like one of the names that was on the cutting room floor was the Big Welcome or something. Like I just remember like welcoming was one of the things that we wanted everyone to feel when they came. The name Second Story implies a lot of things. Obviously, directionally, it's a second floor of a building.
Right.
Also, kind of the idea of a second home. Because obviously, so many people that come to Columbus State and college or find themselves, in the military in Columbus, they really are not from Columbus. This is not home.
Yeah.
And if you've ever gone somewhere and been someplace that's not your home, it's just hard. It's not as easy to be, to find sort of comfort in a place that is not the place you grew up in, or the place is not where your parents are, or whatever. And so we wanted to be a safe place for people in that way. And then finally, Second Story implies that sort of our second story, that is our story in Christ. Mm-hmm. Our second story is our life after Christ has come into our life, and sort of understanding the freedom of a life in Christ, and kind of being forward focused on what God has in store for us, and not necessarily looking backward at some of the baggage and guilt of our lives and the things that we did, and sort of looking toward that freedom, that Christ promises. That comes with a relationship with Him, and understanding that and sort of celebrating that. And that's kind of what Second Story is. Yeah. So Second Story has been a wonderful place, and it's brought so many people into our lives, just like you, that have, that maybe have come for a moment or a season and then stuck around far longer because they found a way to not only, receive a part of what our ministry offers, but also really found an element of being able to lead their peers and guide and encourage them in some way that was focused on Christ. And it's been fun to just sort of give young adults a place where they can do that. They can have that role, where they're immediately both sort of welcomed, like I mentioned, like given that welcome, but almost we're immediately asked them to extend that welcome to the next person, and kind of immediately be in that sort of mindset when they walk in the door.
Love it.
Yeah.
So
that's me. So yes, I'm Brandon Strozier again, and I've had a wonderful time here in your podcast. What a great place, and what a great time, and thanks for being so easy to talk to, and such a competent host
and being willing.
Yes, it's been my pleasure, and I hope that some of my Firestone phone call makes it into the podcast. Unfortunately, got to get those shocks replaced on the back of the truck, and they were going to call me, and they wanted to tell me.
Shocks.
There's always something more to be updated. There's always something more.
Like, hey, if you can give us some more of your money.
Yeah, unfortunately that is often what happens, but I do recommend Firestone Uptown. They're not bad. I've been working with them for 16 years, and they're not bad.
This podcast is brought to you by Firestone.
Yeah. And Brandon Strozier and Second Story. Yeah. So, but thank you so much for being interested enough to reach out and find out more about my story.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kayla.
You're a heck of a guy.
Thanks, Kayla.
All right. Guys, this is all we got. So thank you for watching the Fortcast, and for continuing to support and fellowshipping with us online. And we will see you next week.
See you later.